In Port Harcourt, the city of oil and power, the name Zara Adebayo was spoken with a mix of awe and trepidation. People said she didn't just run an oil empire, she controlled her own emotions with the same precision, always cold, exact, and never revealing a crack in her facade. Zara wore custom-made designer outfits, lived in an ivory-white mansion under heavy guard, where the high walls seemed not only to shut out the world, but also to imprison the loneliness within. Her life was a series of meetings, business trips, and silent homecomings, a perfectly programmed existence. But fate, like a sudden thunderstorm in the Niger Delta, never announces its arrival, and that afternoon's rain was about to change everything. Zara Adebayo was the kind of woman people stopped to stare at when she walked into a room, not just because of her sharp beauty, but because she carried herself like a queen, tall, with fair skin, high cheekbones, and eyes that never seemed to smile. Everything about her, from the outfits she never wore twice to the tall black iron gate of her mansion that never opened for strangers, sent a single message: untouchable. People whispered that she was heartless. They said she had no family, no friends, no one to trust, only money and power. And they were right. Zara was utterly alone. Her husband, Kunle Adebayo, had died in a plane crash 3 years ago. They had been married for 10 years, but never had children. Since that day, her world consisted only of work, flights, and the deafening silence that greeted her at home. That was her life, a life that was about to be turned upside down. It all began on a rainy Thursday afternoon. The Port Harcourt sky had turned a grim gray since midday. Thick clouds obscured the sun, casting the entire city in a heavy, leaden hue. The rain began to fall, first as a light drizzle, then quickly becoming a heavy, torrential downpour. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a somber sound like a battle drum. Zara sat in the back seat of her gleaming black Range Rover. Her driver, Bayo, was navigating slowly through the dense traffic. He glanced at the rearview mirror, seeing his madam staring blankly out the window. "Madam, we might be stuck here until nightfall. Would you like me to take the shortcut through the GRA?" Bayo asked, his voice laced with concern. Zara didn't answer right away. She had just returned from an incredibly tense board meeting. The numbers, the charts, and the scrutinizing eyes still haunted her mind. She let out a soft sigh, a wave of exhaustion washing over her. "Just take Olu Obasanjo Road, Bayo. I don't care if it takes 2 hours." Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "Yes, ma'am," Bayo replied and turned the steering wheel, merging into another, even more congested line of cars. Outside, the rain hammered against the windshield. On the sidewalks, people scurried for cover. A few had umbrellas, but most did not. They used briefcases, folders, even plastic chairs to shield their heads. The air was filled with the blare of car horns and the shouts of street vendors, a chaotic scene as if everyone was trying to escape something unseen. Then the car stopped. The traffic light ahead turned red. The wipers moved back and forth rhythmically, creating brief moments of clarity on the glass. Bayo was about to complain about the gridlock when Zara raised her hand slightly, a gesture for silence. "What is that?" she said, her voice hoarse, her eyes squinting through the thick sheet of rain. Bayo looked in the direction of her gaze. "What is it, madam?" "There, near the traffic light. That boy." Bayo turned his head and saw a skinny boy, perhaps 12 or 13 years old. He was barefoot, his whole body shaking from the cold, standing on the median strip. But what was truly arresting was that in his arms, he held 2 tiny infants. The babies were wrapped in thin sheets of nylon, their clothes soaked through. Their cries were faint but sharp, audible even through the soundproofed glass of the car. The boy stood there, his head bowed, as the rain poured down on all 3 of them. Bayo frowned. "It's just another begging trick, madam. They're always doing this. Some of them even rent babies to gain sympathy." But Zara wasn't listening. Her eyes were fixed on the faces of the 2 babies. Something about them made her chest tighten painfully. She unconsciously leaned forward, as if a closer look could explain what her mind couldn't comprehend. she whispered, almost to herself. Those eyes. The baby on the left briefly lifted her face. Her eyes were amber, a rare, light brown color, almost golden in the streetlights. They were Kunle's eyes, the distinctive eyes of the Adebayo family that she had once fallen in love with. It can't be, Zara thought. She blinked repeatedly. Maybe it was the rain, the lights, or her mind playing tricks on her. But then the second baby looked up, and the exact same amber eyes stared back at her. Her heart skipped a beat. "Stop the car," Zara commanded, her voice urgent and sharp. Bayo looked confused. "Madam, but I said, stop the car, now!" The driver, startled, immediately swerved to the curb and hit the brakes. Without a moment's hesitation, Zara opened the door and stepped out into the rain, ignoring the cold water that hit her face and soaked her designer dress. Her high heels sank into the mud, but she didn't care. Bayo quickly followed with an umbrella. "Madam, you'll catch a cold, please." But Zara was already walking fast, heading straight for the boy. When she reached him, he looked up, his face filled with fear and surprise. He said nothing, just clutched the babies tighter. "Who are you?" Zara asked, her voice retaining its usual firmness. The boy looked down at the babies, then back at her. I am Emeka." She bent down slightly, her eyes never leaving the twins. "Are they your siblings?" "Yes," the boy said, tightening his grip. "They are mine." Zara raised an eyebrow. "Your sisters?" Emeka hesitated for a moment. "No, they are my daughters." Zara took a step back, stunned. "Your what?" The boy nodded slowly. "I am their father." Zara stared at him, unsure whether to be angry, shocked, or confused. "You're what, 12? "I'm 13, he quickly corrected her. She shook her head, still skeptical. "And where is their mother?" Emeka looked away, his voice barely a whisper. "She died when they were born." The rain kept pouring. The babies shivered. One of them began to cry again. A weak, hoarse sound. Zara's lips parted, but she didn't know what else to say. The boy was clearly lying about something, perhaps everything. But the way he cradled and protected the twins, it didn't feel like a trick. He didn't hold out his hand for money. He didn't beg. He just stood there, enduring. Zara took a deep breath and looked back at her car. The wipers were still moving. Bayo was still holding the umbrella behind her. She turned to him. "Bring them inside." Bayo froze. "Madam?" "I said, carry them into the car." Seeing the driver still hesitated, Zara's voice hardened. "Do you want me to repeat myself in Igbo?" "No, madam." Bayo quickly stepped forward. Emeka looked terrified and stepped back. "Please don't take them. Please." Zara gently raised her hand. "We're not taking them from you. You are coming with us. I don't want to go to the police station." "No police," she said, her eyes softening. "I promise." Emeka hesitated. He looked at the strange woman, at the luxurious car, and then down at the two precious lives in his arms. Finally, slowly and carefully, he followed her to the car. Inside the Range Rover, the heater was turned on. The twins were wrapped in Zara's soft cashmere scarf. They had stopped crying. Emeka sat stiffly on the edge of the seat, water dripping from his hair onto the leather, his eyes darting around like a trapped animal. Bayo drove slowly, the atmosphere in the car thick with unspoken questions. Zara didn't say much. She just stared at the babies, their amber eyes now closed, their tiny chests rising and falling with each breath. She didn't know what this meant yet. She didn't know if she had just made a foolish or a fateful decision. But she knew one thing for sure. This was not a mistake. Something had led her to them, and she was going to find out why. The Range Rover glided through the giant wrought iron gates, silent as a phantom. As the curving driveway led to the main entrance of the ivory-white mansion, Emeka held his breath. He pressed his face against the car window, his eyes wide as he took in the tall palm trees and the perfectly manicured gardens. The light pouring from the house turned it into a palace in the rainy night. You live here?" he finally managed to ask, his voice filled with astonishment. Zara didn't answer. She was still lost in her own thoughts. When the car stopped, 2 uniformed staff members rushed out with large umbrellas. One opened Zara's door. The other reached to take the babies, but she quickly pulled back. "Don't touch them," she commanded, her voice sharp. The staff member flinched and withdrew his hands, his face a mask of confusion. Zara carefully stepped out of the car, clutching the 2 babies to her chest. Her heels clicked against the wet tiles. Emeka followed slowly. He stopped at the expensive doormat, trying to wipe his bare, muddy feet, as if terrified of staining anything in this pristine world. Bayo stood at the door, whispering something to one of the guards. The faces of both men were filled with bewilderment and concern. Inside the mansion, the air was warm and smelled faintly of lemongrass polish. A giant crystal chandelier hung over the marble floor, casting sparkling reflections. Soft classical music played from hidden speakers. Emeka froze at the threshold, looking down at his dirty feet. Zara turned around. "What is it?" The boy looked up, whispering, I'm dirty." She stared at him for a second, then walked to a nearby wooden cabinet and took out a thick towel. "Step inside." The boy obeyed. "Wipe your feet." Emeka quickly bent down and did as he was told. Then Zara called out, "Funke!" A woman in a green housekeeper's uniform hurried in. "Yeah, madam." "Prepare a bowl of warm water and call Dr. Okoro to come here immediately." Funke nodded and rushed off. Emeka quietly observed everything. His eyes scanned the high ceiling, the art on the walls, and the gold trimmings on the staircase. He had never seen anything like this in his life. Zara walked into the living room and gently placed the babies on a white velvet sofa. She took off her scarf and used it to dry their faces again. One of the babies stirred and let out a cry. Emeka immediately ran over. "Is she okay?" Zara looked at him. "You can tell them apart?" The boy nodded. "Yes, that's Ayana." "The other one is Ife." She blinked slowly. "Ayana and Ife," she repeated, as if testing the names on her tongue. "You named them?" "Yes," he said, wringing his hands nervously. Zara looked at the babies again. She didn't understand why she had brought them here. It had all happened so fast. One moment she was returning from a meeting, the next she was cradling twin babies that weren't hers. Or perhaps, in some way, they were. Her heart refused to believe it, but her eyes could not forget what they had seen. Those amber eyes, those rare, golden brown eyes. Kunle, her late husband, had them. And now, so did these babies. A few minutes later, a middle-aged man in a white coat walked in with a black medical bag. "Good evening, madam," he said, bowing slightly. "Doctor, thank you for coming so quickly," Zara said. "Please check on them. They've been out in the rain." Dr. Okoro bent over, gently placing his hand on the babies' foreheads, and began his examination. Emeka stood in the corner, watching silently. After 10 minutes, the doctor looked up. "They have hypothermia. Their breathing is a bit shallow, but there's no sign of lung congestion yet. We need to warm them up quickly and give them fluids. They are very weak, most likely from hunger." "Are they safe?" Zara asked. "They are stable for now, but they need rest, milk, and close observation." Zara nodded. "Do whatever is necessary." As the doctor set up 2 small IV drips for each child, Zara turned to Emeka. "Have they been eating?" The boy nodded slowly. "I try to feed them every day, but it's hard." "What do you feed them?" "Sometimes pap, sometimes bread soaked in water. If I get money, I buy milk, but most days I don't get anything." She stared at him. "Where do you live?" Emeka lowered his head. "I sleep behind the church, under the wooden shelter." She blinked. "Just you and the babies?" "Yes." "For how long?" "Since Ayana and Ife were born. Before that, we stayed in a woman's kiosk, but she sent us away after my mother died." Zara pressed her lips together tightly. She hated the feeling in her chest. It was heavy, as if someone had placed a stone there. "Who was your mother?" Her name was Ngozi Okafor. She was a teacher. And your father? Emeka hesitated. I don't know much. He used to visit sometimes. Not always. Just once in a while. Zara's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes locked onto the boy. What did he look like? Emeka looked confused. I don't know. I was small then. I just remember his eyes. What about them? They looked like theirs. He pointed to the twins. Zara didn't answer. She quickly turned her face away. That night, the babies were placed in a guest room, in a clean, soft crib that Zara's staff had brought down from storage. The heater was on. Warm blankets covered them. Emeka was given a warm bath and a change of clothes, an old outfit from the gardener's son. He ate rice and stew as if he hadn't seen food in days. Then he fell asleep on a small couch near the baby's room, his arms wrapped around himself. But Zara did not sleep. She stood by the window in her bedroom, watching the rain fall on the garden below. She couldn't stop thinking about Kunle. They had been married for 10 years, 10 whole years. He had told her he loved her. He had told her they were in this together. He had told her it didn't matter that they couldn't have children, that they would travel, grow old together, and be happy. But he had lied. If these children were his, if that boy was telling the truth, then Kunle had betrayed her in the worst possible way. And now he wasn't even alive to explain. At midnight, Zara opened a drawer. She took out an old photo album, one she hadn't touched in years. She flipped through the pages slowly. There he was, Kunle Adebayo, smiling beside her on their wedding day. Strong, tall, handsome, with those same amber eyes. The eyes she had fallen in love with. The eyes she now saw in twin baby girls. Her hand trembled as she closed the album. She sat on the bed, her face buried in her palms. I need to be sure, she whispered. She stood up, picked up her phone, and called Dr. Okoro again. He answered sleepily. Doctor, I need a DNA test. He sat up straight. Madam, I want you to run a DNA test on those babies. Compare them with Kunle's sample on file, the one we saved when we did his autopsy. Ah, yes, I remember. We have it on file. Good. Start tomorrow. All right, madam. Are you okay? She didn't answer that question. She ended the call and stood motionless in the dark. She had just taken the first step, and deep down, she knew the truth was coming, whether she liked it or not. 2 days later, while waiting for the results, Zara couldn't rest. An unexplainable urge led her to Kunle's study. The room had been locked since the day he died, a sacred shrine to his memory. She stood before the door for a long time before turning the key. The room smelled of dust and something old, quiet. Everything was just as he had left it. Books on the shelf, photos on the desk, his suit in the closet. She walked to his desk and sat in his leather chair. She opened the drawers one by one. Old bank statements, pens, a half-finished crossword puzzle. Then she found a small wooden box, hidden in the very back. Inside were letters. Love letters. Not from her, but from someone else. The sender's name was Ngozi Okafor. Zara's heart seized. She opened one letter with trembling hands. The handwriting was neat and gentle. My dearest Kunle, thank you for coming last weekend. Emeka was so happy. I wish you could have stayed longer. I understand your life is complicated, and I want you to know I don't expect anything. Just come when you can. Love, Ngozi. Zara felt it was hard to breathe. She opened another letter, dated about a year later. Emeka asks about you every day. I tell him you're busy saving the world. I don't want him to hate you, so I always say good things. But Kunle, sometimes I wish you would just tell her. Tell your wife the truth. It's time. Your son and I deserve more than secrets. Zara closed the box. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably. She stood up and walked out of the room. She didn't cry. She just walked straight to her bedroom and locked the door. The truth wasn't just coming anymore. It was here, in her house. And it was tearing her apart piece by piece. The rumors didn't stay within the mansion's 4 walls. In a house like Zara Adebayo's, everything has ears. The guards, the drivers, even the housekeepers. And once the first whisper escaped the gates, it spread like wildfire. By the next morning, her name was being discussed in hushed tones all across the high-end streets of Port Harcourt. She brought home a street boy. They say the twins are her husband's children. Did Kunle really cheat on her all those years? Zara knew it wouldn't be long before the people who mattered most would come knocking. Not out of concern, but out of fear. Fear that she was about to upset the balance of power in the Adebayo empire. And she was right. They arrived on a Sunday afternoon. 3 black SUVs rolled into her compound like kings arriving for war. Her head of security called her immediately. "Madam, it's Chief Obina Adebayo with his 2 cousins." She rose from her reading chair in her private lounge. "Let them in," she said simply. Chief Obina was Kunle's older brother, a bulky man with a sharp voice and a habit of speaking as if the entire world owed him something. He walked in with his chest puffed out, followed by 2 younger men in traditional Agbada robes, wearing sunglasses indoors. Zara didn't stand when they entered the living room. She only crossed her legs and looked at them. "Good afternoon." Chief Obina didn't smile. "We need to talk." "I assume that's why you're here." The youngest man hissed slightly. "So, it's true." Zara looked at him. "What exactly is true?" Chief Obina didn't sit. He paced the room as if he owned it. "You brought a boy into this house. A boy with 2 infants. Infants that people are saying belong to Kunle." Zara said nothing. Chief Obina's eyes narrowed. "Is it true?" "Yes," she answered, her voice cold as ice. "They are his children." A heavy silence fell over the room. The faces of the 3 men hardened. Chief Obina slammed his hand on the table. "And you brought them into this house? Just like that? Have you lost your mind?" "They are Kunle's children. They carry the Adebayo blood." "That doesn't mean they belong here," one of the cousins shouted. "They are the product of shame." Zara stood up. Now she faced them, her queenly aura radiating powerfully. "The only shame here is a man who hid his own children, and a family that would let them starve in the streets out of pride." Chief Obina pointed a finger at her. "You are destroying everything. The board is already asking questions. The shareholders are restless, bringing in children from nowhere. That is not how things are done in our family." Zara folded her arms. "What you mean is, you were planning to take over everything." He didn't deny it. "You have no child," he said bluntly. "No heir. That means the family takes over. That is how things are done." "Not anymore," she retorted. The youngest cousin spoke up. "So you want to name that boy as the heir? A street boy?" "Emeka is not a street boy," she said firmly. "He is Kunle's son, which makes him more of an heir than any of you." The cousin laughed bitterly. "He doesn't even know how to hold a spoon." "He will learn." "You are making a huge mistake, Zara." She took a step closer. "I made one mistake before. I trusted Kunle blindly. I let him lead everything while I played the quiet wife. Never again." Chief Obina straightened up, his face a mask of menace. "We will fight you. In court, in the press, wherever we have to." Zara's voice dropped, cold and decisive. "Go ahead, but you will lose, because unlike you, I have the truth." He pointed at her one last time. "You will regret this." She lifted her chin. "No. You will regret underestimating me." After her in-laws left, the mansion fell into a tense silence. Zara sat alone in the vast living room, but she didn't feel empty. For the first time in years, her solitude had been replaced by a different emotion. A cold, calculated fury. Their audacity, their greed, and their condescension had ignited a fighting spirit within her. She would not let them insult Ngozi's memory. She would not let them dictate the fate of these innocent children. Just then, her phone rang. It was Dr. Okoro. "Madam, the results are in." Zara took a deep breath. "Tell me." "There is no doubt, madam. I rechecked twice. The probability of paternity between the twin girls and the DNA sample of the late Chief Kunle Adebayo is 99.98%. The file in Zara's hand fell to the floor. It was done. It was irrefutable truth. The rage inside her now had a powerful ally: certainty. She was no longer a woman acting on instinct or suspicion. She was the defender of a buried truth. She picked up her phone and called her personal lawyer, Barrister Adekunle, a sharp and loyal man. "Adekunle, arrange a press conference for the day after tomorrow." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "A press conference? Madam, perhaps we should handle this more discreetly. Chief Obinna is not an easy man to deal with." "Precisely," Zara replied, her voice firm. "I will not let him and the rumors control this narrative. We will announce the truth on our terms." She paused. "I did not start this war, Adekunle, but I will certainly be the one to finish it." 2 days later, the small conference room at a luxury hotel was packed with journalists and cameras. Zara Adebayo walked in, not as a grieving widow, but as a powerful chairwoman. She wore a simple black dress, no jewelry, no heavy makeup. Her beauty radiated from the determination in her eyes. She sat down before the dozens of microphones and began. "My name is Zara Adebayo, widow of the late Chief Kunle Adebayo, a man I loved deeply." The room was silent. And also a man who, as I recently discovered, had a second family outside of our marriage. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. She held up her hand for silence. "I discovered this not through rumors, but through fact. A few weeks ago I found his son, Emeka, begging in the rain, holding his twin baby sisters, Ayana and Ife." She took out a file and held it up. "I conducted a DNA test. The results are clear." She placed the file on the table. "This is real." The room fell quiet again. "I know this shocks you. It shocked me, too. But the truth doesn't care about feelings. It simply is." She paused, looking directly at the cameras. "Now, some people believe I should hide them, erase them, pretend they don't exist to protect the so-called family legacy. But I will not." Her voice grew stronger. "Those children carry my husband's blood, whether I like it or not. And unlike others, they never asked to be born in secret. They never lied. They simply exist." A reporter raised a hand. "Madam, are you adopting them?" "I am doing more," she said. "I am raising them. I am giving them my name, my protection, and my future. I will shield them from family, from the courts, and from people who think that being born on the street makes you less human." Another reporter asked, "What about the company, Mrs. Adebayo? This will affect the shareholders." Zara smiled, a cold smile. "I built half of that company with my own hands and mind. I will not be pushed aside. These children are not here for your money. They are here because they deserve to live." "What if Chief Obinna fights you?" "Then he will learn what it feels like to lose." The press conference ended in a storm of flashing lights and shouted questions. Chief Obinna immediately made good on his threat. He filed a lawsuit, claiming Zara was emotionally unstable and acting out of grief, arguing that she was unfit to care for children. He petitioned the court to freeze the family estate and remove her from the board. On the first day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Zara entered in a dark blue suit, her heels clicking decisively on the floor. Barrister Adekunle was right behind her, calm and sharp. Across the room, Chief Obinna sat with his lawyers, his face a thunderous scowl. When it was time to speak, Obinna's lawyer stood. "My lord, we are here to protect the legacy of the late Chief Kunle Adebayo. The woman before you is grieving, yes, but she is also unstable. She has taken in unknown children based on an emotional whim and is trying to hand over everything our client's family built to strangers. We ask that her control over the estate be suspended and that the children be removed from her custody until we can verify their identities." The judge nodded slowly and turned to Zara's side. Response. Barrister Adekunle stood. He held up the DNA report. "My lord, there is no rumor here. There is fact. Scientific proof that these children are indeed the biological offspring of the late Chief Kunle." That alone gives them a rightful place in this family. He placed the papers on the table. But more than blood, we must ask, what is family? Is it just a name, or is it love, sacrifice, and truth? Because if it is the latter, then Madame Zara Adebayo is already their mother in every way that counts. The room was quiet. The judge looked from one side to the other. He leaned forward. I will review the documents and give my ruling in 3 days. Court is dismissed. 3 days later, the verdict came. The entire courtroom held its breath. The judge's voice was clear and firm as he read, after reviewing the submitted evidence, including DNA results, care reports, and witness statements, the court sees no reason to remove Madame Zara Adebayo from her legal guardianship over the minors in question. Her actions, while untraditional, have been found to be in the best interest of the children. Zara's breath caught in her throat. The judge continued. Furthermore, the estate remains under her control, and the board shall respect the late chief's family rights as they now stand. Case dismissed. Silence. Then Obina's lawyer stood up angrily. We will appeal. The judge replied, You are free to try, but the court has spoken. Zara stood up quietly. She turned to Obina, her eyes holding no triumph, only resolve. He glared at her. You think this is over? She smiled faintly. No, but this is where my winning begins. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed her again. This time, she stopped. I didn't fight for power, she said, her voice ringing out. I fought for 3 children who were forgotten. One of them saved their lives. Now, I will spend the rest of mine saving his. She walked past the cameras, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. That night she came home and found Emeka waiting at the door. His face told her everything. He had seen the news. You won, he whispered. She sat down beside him on the steps. No, she said. We won. She looked deep into the boy's eyes that had seen far too much. Emeka, she said softly, I signed the papers today. Legally, you are mine now. Ayana and Ife, too. The boy froze. You mean, you adopted us? She smiled, the first truly warm and genuine smile in years. Yes, you are my son. They are my daughters. Emeka didn't cry. He just launched himself into her arms, holding on tightly. He didn't have to say a word. In that embrace, a new family was officially born, built from the ashes of betrayal, but forged in love and resilience. He would never go back to the street, ever again. The legal battle was over, but the real change was just beginning. The mansion, which once echoed with silence, was now filled with life. Each morning began not with an alarm clock, but with the pitter-patter of tiny feet running down the hallway. Ayana and Ife had started to walk. They chased each other around the house, bumping into chairs and giggling loudly. Emeka had grown taller. His shoulders were broader, his voice deeper, and more than anything, his eyes had changed. The fear, shame, and confusion were gone. In their place was confidence. One evening, Zara stood at the edge of the living room, holding a warm cup of tea. She watched as Emeka sat with Ayana and Ife, helping them arrange plastic plates on the floor as if it were a restaurant. He was teaching them to say please and thank you. Ife, say thank you, he said. The little girl looked up, said something close enough, then laughed and clapped. Emeka laughed with her. Close enough. Zara smiled. She had never imagined this would be her life. The woman once known as cold, proud, and unreachable was now sharing her home with 3 children who had changed everything. And she was glad they did. She had defeated her in-laws, the board, and the court. But there was still one person she hadn't truly faced, herself. One morning she stood before her mirror. Her eyes looked tired. She remembered the Zara from years ago, the woman who laughed easily, who danced barefoot in the living room with Kunle after dinner, the one who believed in forever. That Zara was gone. And perhaps she needed to say goodbye to her, for real. That evening, she called Emeka into her office. He sat down, hugging a throw pillow as he always did when he was nervous. Is there anything you want to ask me? Zara began. Emeka hesitated, then asked the question he had held in his heart for so long. Did you love him? My father. Zara paused. Yes, she said. I loved the man I thought he was. The boy lowered his head. I'm sorry. You don't need to be sorry, Emeka. You did nothing wrong. She looked at the boy, the son that fate had brought her. But I am also grateful to him. Emeka looked up, confused. Because he gave me you, so maybe the pain led to something beautiful. The boy smiled, but then the smile faded. At school they ask where I came from. When I say I used to live on the street, they laugh. Zara's heart ached. She stood up, walked over to sit beside him, and took his hand. Then let them laugh. But it hurts. I know, she said. But every great story starts in a small place. Let them laugh now. One day, they will read about you in books. The boy blinked. Really? Yes. And they will wish they had been a part of your story. A week later, Zara called Barrister Adekunle. I want to start a foundation. A wonderful idea, madam. What shall we name it? Zara didn't hesitate. Then Ngozi Okafor Foundation, in memory of their mother. There was a pause on the line. That is a very noble gesture, madam. It's the right thing to do, she said softly. The day of the launch was held in an elegant hall with white curtains and soft music. The guests were carefully selected. No fake well-wishers, no gossip-hungry reporters, just real people. Doctors, teachers, social workers, and mothers who understood what it meant to raise a child without support. Zara stood before the microphone in a simple green dress. Emeka stood beside her, dressed in a black suit and tie, holding a framed photo of Ngozi. Ayana and Ife sat with their nanny in the front row, wearing matching dresses with white ribbons in their hair. Zara began. Today is not about money, image, or power. It's about life. It's about love. And it's about second chances. The room was quiet. She continued. This foundation is named after a woman I never had the chance to meet, but who gave me the greatest gift of my life. Her children. Her voice shook slightly, but she kept speaking. She raised Emeka with grace, strength, and in silence. And when she left this world, she left behind 2 daughters who carry that same light. She paused, looking at Emeka. He looked back, his eyes steady. Zara faced the crowd again. I didn't choose this journey, but it found me, and I embraced it. Today, I choose to help others who feel forgotten. This is for them. The room applauded, but Emeka's eyes were on her alone. He slowly stepped forward and whispered, Can I say something? Zara blinked, surprised. Are you sure? He nodded. She stepped aside. Emeka held the microphone tightly. His hands trembled a little, but his voice did not. My name is Emeka, he said. I used to beg on the street. I carried my baby sisters through rain, through dust, through hunger. I used to think life would never get better. People leaned forward. He continued. Then I met a woman. She didn't ask questions. She didn't judge. She just stopped her car and helped. He turned to look at Zara. I didn't know who she was. I didn't even think she would remember me the next day. But she did more than remember. She stayed. She cared. She fought for me. He looked at the crowd again. Now I don't just have a roof over my head. I have a name. I have a future. And I have a mother. His voice broke slightly. He smiled through his tears. She didn't give birth to me, but she gave me life. The entire room stood up. Zara wiped her face, her eyes full of tears. She walked over and hugged him tightly. The cameras flashed, but neither of them noticed. That night, back at the mansion, Emeka went out to the backyard where Zara was sitting under the stars. He sat down beside her quietly. Thank you for letting me speak, he said. You spoke from your heart, she replied. A moment later, he asked the question he had never asked before. Why did you stop that day? The day you saw me in the rain. You didn't know me. You didn't know who we were, but you stopped. Zara thought back to that moment. The traffic, the crying babies, the tiny boy shielding them with his body, and those amber eyes. "I don't know," she said softly. "Something about you pulled me in. I was scared too, but I couldn't drive away." He looked at her again. "Thank you for not driving away." She took his hand. "I thank God every day that I didn't." 3 years passed. One rainy evening, Zara drove to the exact spot on the street where she first saw Emeka. She got out of the car, stood under her umbrella for a while, and watched the traffic go by. This place had once changed everything. Now, it felt like the beginning of a new story. Back at home, Emeka, now a confident 16-year-old, was finishing a speech for his school's debate competition. Ayana and Ife were reading books beside him. When Zara walked in, all three ran to her. "Where did you go?" Emeka asked. She smiled. "I went to where it all began." He nodded, understanding. Then he looked at her, his amber eyes bright with clear purpose. "Mom, I want to study law. I want to fight for children like me. I want to fight for mothers like Ngozi." She looked at him, her heart swelling with warmth. "Then you will," she said. He smiled. "I'll make you proud." She pulled him close and hugged him, breathing in the scent of maturity and hope. "You already have,"